All right, we should be live for another day. We should be good to go. YouTube working like clockwork today. Absolutely amazing. Working. Yep, I don't need to hear myself twice. That's actually how good it's working. Just like that, loads up instantly. YouTube's on fire today, ladies and gentlemen. We're doing well. Um, Speaking of doing well, the exact opposite of that, which would be not doing well, is Minnesota. Don't know how I tied that together because that didn't really make any sense. But you know what also doesn't make any sense? The millions of dollars they're giving to these fake daycares. We went over the entire Nick Shirley video yesterday. Phenomenal work from Nick Shirley, as always. Go check him out. Highly recommend his stuff. We have a few things to go over today. We have more of the Minnesota scandal stuff, the daycare stuff. We have something we'll get into essentially right away as I'm setting things up here. China conducting military drills around Taiwan. We have a Pierre Poilievre interview, a little bit of that to go over. And we'll end the stream as we usually do with Moose on the Loose. Let's get right into this while I set everything else up.
From the Chinese military here. China Military Bugle, official government military account. Military drills Justice Mission 2025 around Taiwan Island demonstrate China's resolve to defend sovereignty. That's control over its own country, over its own affairs. Sovereignty against external interference. Remember, China considers Taiwan part of China. The joint military drills, Justice Mission 2025, around the Taiwan Island, starting on the morning of December 29th, which is yesterday China time and Taiwan time, serve as a powerful deterrent against external interference and a clear warning that any attempt to cross the red line regarding Taiwan will be met with resolute countermeasures. Now, you'll see they talk about the U.S. recently announcing arms sales to Taiwan. The drills conducted by the Chinese People's Liberation Army, Eastern Theater Command, in the Taiwan Strait and areas to the north, southwest, southeast, and east of the Taiwan Island are a part of a series of Beijing's responses to the U.S. arms sales to Taiwan. They literally say it. They are part of a series of Beijing's responses to the U.S. arms sales to Taiwan, as well as a warning to the Lashingti, I don't know what that means, to the Lashingti authorities in Taiwan. Maybe they're just talking about the government there. Hold on a second here. I'll tell you that. Might be a weird. Oh, yeah. I think that it says, I asked AI, it says it sounds like it's referring to Lai Ching-te, who is currently the president of Taiwan. Okay. He is known for a firm stance on Taiwanese sovereignty.
So it's a bit hard to see there, but in the little picture here beside Agenda Free, there's a bunch of zones, and that's where they're conducting the military drills. This isn't the first time China has done something like this, but I would say that it's more extensive, a more intense drill, you could say. There's more and more going on. I think, what was it, a few months ago, back in the summer? Maybe September? There was a Chinese warship that was chasing I believe it was a boat from Taiwan, and the Chinese warship actually smashed into its own ship. There was two of them circling this Taiwanese boat, this vessel, and they were going after it. No shells were fired. I'll actually look for the footage because it's actually kind of crazy. But the Chinese warship came out in front to kind of cut off the Taiwanese vessel, and another Chinese warship came in and just smashed right into one another. It's crazy footage. I'll look for it right now.
His current position, says Google AI, is that Taiwan is already a sovereign, independent nation, and there is no need to formally declare independence. But He aims to deepen ties with the U.S., Japan, and other democratic nations to reduce economic reliance on mainland China. Anyways, look what it says here. This is what they said when they were announcing this is what the Chinese military said when they were announcing these drills. The United States recently announced a record-breaking $11.1 billion arms sale to China's Taiwan region, which once again exposes a deep contradiction between Washington's words and deeds. On the one hand, the U.S. repeatedly claims it does not support Taiwan independence and that it adheres to the One China policy. On the other hand, it continues to push forward massive arms packages, this time including systems with clear offensive characteristics. Such behavior by the U.S. is not only a serious breach of the One China principle and the three China U.S. joint communiques, but also a blatant interference in China's internal affairs and an open challenge to China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The consequences of such massive U.S. arms sales to Taiwan are severe and multifaceted. The U.S. is not maintaining a balance, but is instead emboldening Taiwan independence separatist forces to take increasingly dangerous risks. These arms sales act as a catalyst for tension, transforming the Taiwan Strait into a potential flashpoint for conflict. So the Chinese military literally says that these drills that are going on now are part of a series of Beijing's responses to U.S. arms sales to Taiwan, as well as a warning to the Taiwanese authorities. Okay? That's why they say they're doing this. Now, let me just...
So it's a big situation going on there between China and Taiwan. I said it was a Taiwanese boat. It actually was a Filipino boat. But regardless, it just shows how aggressive the Chinese military and Navy are. So this is a Philippines Coast Guard. And this warship, there's two of them. They just are going after this Coast Guard. It happens very quickly there, but you could see, right, and you can hear, they smash directly into each other, and there's a lot of footage of these ships, you know, like they're spraying water at them. The Coast Guard was trying to get into communication with the Chinese vessels, and it was a whole nightmare. But the whole point of me showing this was to prove how intense they are, how aggressive they are, and if Taiwan were to step out of these boundaries that China has claimed around them, shit would definitely kick off and hit the fan very quickly. So, I don't know what's going to happen going forward, but like I said, this isn't the first time China has done this sort of thing around Taiwan. And just once again, to clear the record, those two warships were going after a Filipino boat. So that footage is completely separate from what is going on here. I was just proving the point of how aggressive their Navy is.
Just tell you a little more about what they said. The scale and content of Justice Mission 2025 reflect what a Chinese defense spokesperson said in response to U.S. arms sales to Taiwan, that the Chinese PLA will continue to strengthen training and combat readiness, take forceful measures to safeguard national sovereignty and territorial integrity, and resolutely thwart Taiwan independence, separatist activities, and external interference. By conducting these drills, the Chinese military says, the PLA is accumulating first-hand data and experiences on sea conditions, weather, weapon usage, and multi-service coordination. Every U.S. arms sale to Taiwan will only strengthen the Chinese people's resolve to maintain national unity, and each arms sale will urge the People's Liberation Army to improve...
All right, so it's just Chinese communist propaganda at that point, and I don't entirely care what that party has to say, to be honest with you. It is interesting, though, what is going on. Definitely something to keep an eye on. It's a very slippery slope. Things could escalate very quickly. That's essentially what I'm getting at. Moving on. back to what we covered yesterday, the Minnesota fraud. I thought I heard a knock at the door. The Minnesota fraud that is going on at the daycares, out of control spending, and just overall corruption.
Kristi Noem posting video of Homeland Security investigators on the ground in Minneapolis, saying they are, quote, conducting a massive investigation on childcare and other rampant fraud. Their investigation following a viral video that now has nearly 114 million views on X, where independent journalist Nick Shirley appears to show daycares and other businesses that received millions in state funds with no kids inside. Correspondent Garrett Tenney is live with more.
Yeah, Molly, the latest example of these fraud schemes in Minnesota are child care centers where rampant fraud has seemingly been allowed to go on for years now. Quality Learning Center is just one of the child care centers that federal investigators are now looking into. And there are...
It's Quality Learning Center. Get it right. There's no learning going on there. What's up, Spider-Man? How's it going?
Plenty of red flags, starting with the sign on its building that doesn't even spell learning right. Over the past 3 years, the business has been cited for more than 120 violations for all kinds of things, including for not having proper documentation for all of the kids there. Despite that, from 2019 to 2024, the business received nearly $8 million in federal tax money, according to the local ABC station. Shirley also went to other child care centers across the Twin Cities where he says there were similar red flags.
We're just wondering where the children are.
Who are you? We'd like to ask where the money's going. Look at that. Shut us down. Where are the children at? No children inside of this daycare center.
After Shirley's videos went viral, Governor Tim Walz's office sent us this statement saying the governor has worked for years to crack down on fraud and asked the state legislature for more authority to take aggressive action. He has strengthened oversight. Walz's office also...
Clearly not. Whatever action he has taken here, clearly... What a shit statement. What a terrible statement. Like... Oh man, there was a guy who said he had not seen one child enter or leave that daycare for nearly a decade. For nearly a decade, he didn't see anybody leaving there. Other than grown-ass people. And you're gonna sit here and claim that there's been aggressive action taken on this issue? I don't think so. Yeah, it's absolute BS. He does sound like Carney. He sounds like a typical liberal government, right? Just lying to get through.
Defended his handling of the widespread fraud schemes that have been happening for years by claiming he's now taking steps to stop it from happening, including creating a statewide fraud prevention program. But federal investigators are now looking into claims that for years Walz ignored whistleblowers who tried to sound the alarm on the fraud.
This guy now is scrambling to make it look like he's doing something. 2 weeks ago, he created a position with a guy to investigate fraud. 7 years too late, Timmy. It's time that we find answers to all these questions and hold everybody accountable that has ripped off Minnesota taxpayers.
Over the weekend, FBI Director Kash Patel reiterated that this is very much an ongoing investigation and that the Bureau believes the fraud that we've seen so far is just the tip of a very large iceberg. Molly?
Thank you very much, Garrett. Well, this has been an amazing story that has really been covered for a couple years, but has started exploding more in recent weeks as we saw that some of the funding that some of the taxpayer funding that had gone to these groups was actually being funneled to al-Shabaab in foreign countries, terrorist groups, and also this video that went viral this weekend showing that all of these places that had been getting taxpayer funds that claiming to be daycares didn't have any children inside of them. Griff, I'm wondering, is this your path to financial freedom, starting a daycare center in Minnesota?
Well, gosh, Molly, I'm certainly not going to do that because it's illegal, but boy, wouldn't it be easy. And, you know, it's interesting in Garrett's a report there, he was talking about Governor Walz as saying that he's pushing back, saying that he's for years tried to fight against fraud. Well, Really? Is that the case? Because when you trace back how this all started, going back to Ilhan Omar's 2020 Meals Act to just get money out the door to school children who might miss lunches and all these other things, you see that it was a industrial scale fraud opportunity. And in this case, you know, the fact that Nick Shirley went out with a camera, I think is brilliant, because there has been very little reporting from other networks on this story. And you're starting to see now, obviously, from FBI Director Kash Patel says that it's, you know...
Okay, I gotta be completely real here. I have not seen Fox News do any reporting on this, honestly. Not even, like, one segment. And I pretty much constantly have them running right there. Right there to my left. They are running 24/7. Only when Nick Shirley went out of his way to do this have I seen them jump on it. Panel after panel now. For the past 72 hours. It's been the only thing Fox News is talking about. Before that, though, I didn't see one segment, not one program talk about this. I'm sure they maybe talked about government spending, overspending, and fraud in other sections, but not about this, specifically. And I called out all the news organizations yesterday for this very thing. They receive millions and are worth billions. And they aren't going out of their way to do the very thing that a YouTuber with a fraction of the budget is doing. I don't care, Fox News, CNN, CBC, MSNBC, all of these organizations, they're all garbage. Fox News just happens to be the only one that goes against the grain. They're the only one that doesn't just simply say what every other station does. Doesn't make them a good station, though, right? Still gotta question everything they put out there. But at the end of the day, yeah, they seem to be the only one that sort of has a level head. Not on everything. Depends on who's hosting. Right? There's a lot of dog shit hosts on Fox. I would argue that the only good ones are probably Jesse Waters and Gutfeld. But whatever, I digress. There's people who watch other hosts on there who probably have opinions on things, but I don't know. I think a lot of the mainstream media is absolute garbage. I just do. But like I said, Fox News seems to be the only one that goes against the grain.
The tip of an iceberg. Well, where are they? It reminds me, Molly, of when Bill Maloosia and I went down to the border years ago, started standing there with thousands coming across, and no other network had any interest in it. Well, now you're starting to see it, and there are convictions. And then originally, the only discussion you saw on other networks were people that were basically blasting it as, you know, racist or targeting. Well, guess what? 71 of 78 people charged in this case are Somali.
Yeah, well, let's look at how New York Times opinion writer Mara Gay characterized the Minnesota fraud scandal when she joined MS Now this morning.
There's also other scandals in other states, for example, the Mississippi welfare scandal. I mean, this is not unique to politics. Americans know that. But of course, the other factor here is that because it looks like the Somali population in Minnesota, the Somali immigrant population may have been involved in some way, those people are being scapegoated, and that community is being scapegoated in a way that certainly serves the far right.
So, Marie, do you think that this video got 114 million views on social media because people are trying to scapegoat Somalis, or what do you think is causing the interest?
I mean, I have no idea why people watch things online, but this has been a real problem in Minnesota for a long time. The first raids by police on daycare centers were in 2015. So that was a decade ago. In 2022, the FBI started getting involved more in conducting raids as well. Tim Walz has done some things to try and crack down on some of this fraud. I would also point out the Minnesota Star Tribune has written hundreds of stories about this over the past decade. It's not a network, to your point, but if you want to really dig into some of the history here, this is not a new phenomenon. I have no idea why now this video has gone viral, maybe because he went there and was asking questions and people were slamming doors in his face. But this is something Minnesota lawmakers, including, by the way, Congressman Emmer, I mean, he's sort of like...
Maybe it's because he's the only one doing it. Nobody else is going around doing it. At least to the extent that he is. Once again, multi-billion-dollar stations that won't go out of their way to do the very things that a YouTuber with a fraction of the budget is doing. And I'm going to say that over and over again because it's the truth. If Nick Shirley can go and do it, then all of these massive funded stations can go and do the same thing. But they won't. They sit there on a panel and they bitch about it. Like, it's just wild.
He represents Minnesota, a district, like he has no idea what's going on. It hasn't done anything over the past decade to help fix it. So this is a problem. If people have committed crimes, they should be charged. I do hate the language President Trump uses about people from Somalia when he calls them trash or garbage. I don't like that language, separate from that issue of fraud. I just don't think that that's appropriate for a president to use.
Well, I think one of the things that, Kaylee, maybe you can address this too. This video is so interesting. It's 48 minutes. I actually watched every second of it after one of my kids brought it to my attention. And it was riveting to see someone going location to location. Groups, and they were Nick Shirley and his assistant, who's not getting nearly enough credit, is this man who's just a local citizen who noticed that there were never children at any of the daycares that were posted as daycares. So he started digging into how much funding they were getting and what was going on there. And you see the difference in how the media covers stories that they love to cover. If they love to cover a story, a major network with TV cameras would, of course, be on the ground. When they don't want to cover it, they kind of soft pedal it. They might mention, okay, there's rampant fraud to the tune of billions of dollars out of Somalia, but they don't advance the story. So what do you think? Yeah, what do you think about the media coverage now and what could be done?
Well, they're not covering it because it's inconvenient for them to do so, because A, it undermines their immigration agenda, but B, I think we're going to find that a lot of this fraud actually benefited Democratic officials. I think you're going to see that in the investigation. There has already been one report that there was a state candidate out in Washington state who received donations from some of these so-called child care firms in Minnesota. That's a problem. So I do wonder how much of this money has made its way into the political coffers. And I think this story is important for one very big reason, which is that the average American who works hard, who sends their tax money into the IRS every year, has to go through, they have to cross every T, they have to dot every I, or they're going to risk an investigation. And you have the Somali community pilfering billions of dollars, not just from state tax dollars, but from federal tax dollars, in order to run these daycare centers and make a profit off of it. And not only that, but your taxpayer dollars has also funded their ability to open the daycare centers in the first place. There's an account on X called Oilfield Rando who's looking into the grants that went to some of these NGOs that give education courses to immigrant communities on how to open these programs. Your taxpayer dollars.
Okay, I need to hear that one more time.
Has also funded their ability to open the daycare centers in the first place. There's an account on X called Oilfield Rando who's looking into the grants.
There's an account on X. There's a YouTuber doing this. You are a fucking news organization that has journalists. Do your job. How about that? And I know I'm picking on Fox here a little more than probably other stations, but that's because I watch them the most. I would pick on every other station at every given opportunity I can, and I do. As a matter of fact, I do. I sit here and call them all garbage. But my God, for Fox to sit here and act like they're the only ones doing anything about this, all they have done is talked about it on a panel. They haven't invested any other time into this outside of sitting on a panel. Like, come on. It's crazy. How much is Fox News worth? And they're getting their information from X. Oh, X account this and YouTuber that. Like, come on. Where the hell are your people on the ground looking into these things further, actually doing their jobs? It's crazy. Fox News is worth $1. They might as well be worth $1. At this point, my God. And this is what I'm talking about by, like, there's just trash anchors on this station like there are with every other station. This is a prime example. Like, okay, we're moving on. Let's see what this panel has to say.
All right, well, Homeland Security officials are on the ground in Minnesota conducting a massive investigation into multiple fraud schemes happening in the city.
This comes as a group of Minnesota GOP lawmakers urging Governor Tim Walz to resign.
Madeline Rivera joins us live from Washington with the latest. Good morning, Maddie.
Good morning. Attorney General Pam Bondi says they've been looking into these allegations of fraud for months, and they expect more prosecutions will be coming. So far, she says 98 people have been charged, 85 of whom are of Somali descent. DHS officials posted footage on X yesterday showing federal agents on the ground in Minneapolis investigating suspected cases of fraud in daycare and healthcare centers. It comes after an independent reporter, Nick Shirley's video investigating federally funded child care centers in the Twin Cities went viral. Minnesota officials are pushing back, though, saying previous investigations into the locations referenced in Shirley's videos did not uncover evidence of fraud. One child care business that's now under the microscope is Quality Learning Center in Minneapolis, which misspelled learning on its sign. They say they're fixing the spelling.
A lot of the journalism that's been going on the last couple of days has been really dishonest. I don't want to point fingers at anybody, but I do feel like
You literally don't know how to spell learning. I don't think you have the right to speak on this issue of whether or not the journalism has been accurate or biased or whatever the case is. You're receiving millions and millions of dollars, and you don't know how to spell learning. Like, what is this insanity?
what was done was someone came to our building outside of operating hours. When there's a specific sign on our door that says our days and our hours, he came outside of those hours and then claimed, hey, they're closed and they're still making money. They're using taxpayer money to work. And it's like, you don't come outside of operational hours and then say they're using taxpayer money. That was completely false.
Regardless, state Republicans are slamming Governor Tim Walz, saying they've been sounding the alarm over fraud in Minnesota's child care space for years. They say for the good of the state, Governor...
That was the very location where the guy claimed he had not seen one kid enter or leave that building in nearly 8 years, 9 years, whatever he said. It was like 8 years, I think. Not one kid. And then there's a video that just came out, and the parking lot was flooded with cars and people walking in and out with children because they got called out. They were exposed. So now they're trying to cover up and cover their tracks. It's not shocking. It just isn't. Right? They are quite obviously doing things there that are very fraudulent. Very fraudulent. They don't know how to spell learning. They don't know how to spell learning. And they're teaching kids. Come on, guys. Come on, people.
Walz should step aside. Minnesota needs accountability, a reset, and new leadership that can get us back on the right track. It's not just Minnesota facing accusations of money mismanagement. A California auditor says it recently found millions in wasted dollars in state agencies. Guys, back to you.
All right, Maddie. What type of daycare has the daycare open from 2 to 10? That makes absolutely no sense.
I've not seen that.
And then there's some reports in the New York Post that all these places have not had children there at all. And then suddenly when these reports come out, now the children have started to arrive. So somebody...
Exactly. I'm going to try and find that video of the parking lot literally like 10 hours after the videos were taken and after the weekend. It was probably Monday. I'm going to try and find that.
Something here.
Well, the children were, what the report said, I think, is that the children were arriving. They had parents bringing the kids there for the optics of it. And then like an hour later, the kids left just so it looked like that there were kids showing up to these places. But Guy, I'm sorry, you're a dad. I'm not dropping my kid off at a learning center that spells learning, leering.
Yeah.
If you can't get it right on the signage, really, we're going to trust that? I don't think so.
But they have the word quality in there, Laura. It's a quality leering center. The quality leering center seems, I don't know, seems legit. Look, whether or not that specific place was engaged in fraud, and it does seem a little sketchy that all of a sudden they're like, oh, here's a bus full of kids for 1 hour, right? That seems odd to me if that's true. What we do know for a fact And this has been reported not just by independent journalists. It's not just Republicans yelling about it. The New York Times had a big story talking about well over $1 billion in fraud in this state. And the U.S. attorney out there said the number could be much higher than that, closer to $9 billion.
$9 billion. And he said when he looked at the overall spend on Medicare and Medicaid in the state, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $18 billion. He says at least half, if not more, he believes is fraudulent. So you're right. It's around $9 billion just in Minnesota. But now we're hearing, as you just heard from Madeline, it could be California. This is probably not going to end, Lawrence, just in Minnesota.
Well, this is why the administration is surging in ICE, and they've already found criminal aliens that are there on the ground. We had the director of ICE, Todd Lyons, on later. This is what he had to say about these sanctuary city policies driving the fraud here.
What we're seeing is there's always a tide when it comes to sanctuary jurisdictions where you can hide in plain sight. You see a lot of these fraudsters use a lot of the sanctuary rules and sanctuary protections to, enact in criminal fraud just like this. We've been on the ground for so long looking into these states that are conducting these type of material fraud. And when Homeland Security Investigations goes into these businesses, there is criminal activity when it comes to labor trafficking, child trafficking, human exploitation. And that's what we're looking at up there in Minnesota. And you always come back to these sanctuary jurisdictions where you'll find them, like again, hiding in plain sight and using those sanctuary protections to employ, not only illegal aliens, but conduct criminal fraud just like you're seeing right now.
By the way, if you have not watched that, I think it's a 42-minute video. Nick Shirley, that independent journalist, when he went and visited all of these different locations, if you haven't seen it, you should watch it because it is shocking to see.
Yeah, you should watch the video because the people here at Fox News are absolutely useless. And they would not go out of their way to do exactly what he is doing. And that goes with every mainstream media outlet as well. CNN, MSNBC, three-letter organizations across the board. All of them are fucking garbage. If you can't spell learning, something is wrong. Yeah, especially when you claim to be a quality learning center. It's a quality learning center, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we have a Poilievre interview here. Switching gears over to Canadian politics. Listen to a bit of this, then head into a Moose on the Loose video, and then probably call it a day.
Which doesn't build any homes, or yet another defense procurement agency which can't figure out how to buy anything for our military. But because the average welder or small businessman is too busy feeding his kids, building a business, paying his taxes, and he can't decipher it all, he ends up paying for it and getting nothing in return. And that's not just the case when it comes to First Nations programming. It's the case with all the programming. And I don't blame the people, the grassroots people, either in First Nations or other communities. I blame this bureaucratic and political industrial complex in Ottawa.
What role does media play in that?
Well, it should be to hold the government accountable. Unfortunately, our media seems to think that their job is to hold the people accountable to the government rather than the government accountable to the people. But every day there's a scandal that comes out in the form, like read Blacklocks. They're actually a real media outlet. They expose governmental wrongdoing and waste every day, and it gets no coverage in mainstream media. So I think that's why people are looking for alternative media that will get them the facts that the government-funded and corporate-controlled outlets don't report.
I want to make sure.
And that's exactly why mainstream media outlets are reporting on Nick Shirley, because he's an alternative source who's actually doing boots on the ground work. He's actually going out of his way to do things. He's not the only one. There's a lot more out there, but nobody else is doing what he's doing. It's very rare that you find somebody that does the level of work he does, that puts themselves on the line constantly like that. So, just saying. And the fact that we have huge outlets now relying on X accounts, Twitter accounts, and YouTubers for information just shows how much everything has shifted. Nobody cares about these mainstream outlets anymore. A lot of them are dying. A lot of them are dwindling. A lot of them have actually jumped to places like YouTube, TikTok, wherever, because they realize that that's where everything happens now, right? So it's only a matter of time before these alternative sources really, really take off. And a lot of them have. A lot of them already have. Right? Your Patrick Bet-Davids, your Tim Pool, and whoever else you want to talk about. Candace Owens, blah, blah, blah. People here like Moose on the Loose, Sunshine Baby, Capital Clips, whoever. Right? These are the alternative sources that are taking over because nobody cares what your mainstream outlets have to say. Nobody cares what these late night hosts have to say either. People like Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, the list goes on. Stephen Colbert is considered the #1 late night show across the board, and he is losing his show next year. That should tell you the overall health of cable television, the mainstream outlets, all of those three-letter organizations. They're failing to keep up, and they simply can't keep up. They censor themselves. They don't allow alternative opinions. People are running away from them because it's just basic programming. That's simply what it is at the end of the day. CBC is a prime example of just NPC programming. Rarely do they have anybody else on that displays any sort of other thought, right? It's just a big echo chamber. It's a massive echo chamber. And you can see it in the way they conduct interviews, to the way when they have maybe a slightly right-leaning host on, somebody who's maybe just center-right, like David Cochran or Rosemary Barton. They're very quick to shut down opposing thoughts or opinion. And it's because of that, that's why people are running to alternative outlets.
I get this right, so I'm going to read it here. The government of Canada has provided over $3.4 billion in subsidies, tax breaks, and grants to support the operations of the Canadian media industry since 2017. This figure doesn't include the amount spent on CBC or the amounts the government spends on federal advertising, subscriptions with mainstream media company, and it does not include the numerous laws that they've used to protect the media from competition. With such enormous amounts flowing from government, some Canadians are starting to question the independence of mainstream media organizations. Can government subsidies to media organizations coexist with a free and open press?
Let's go back to language. Language is important. You've just made the case that the media is dependent on the government. Can something that is dependent be independent?
After our last interview, to go on the media train here a little bit, several former political staffers reached out to me and told me that there is an unspoken quid pro quo in this town where backroom negotiations with journalists secure favorable coverage and avoid negative coverage in exchange for exclusive interviews. What's your reaction to that?
I guess it's possible. Media have to negotiate to get information, I suppose, but I really don't. I think the main problem is that too much of it is controlled by government, and too much of it is concentrated. And I think what we need to have is more independent voices like yours, so that Canadians have choice and freedom. And we've seen this government has been trying to concentrate more and more media power, whether it's through C11, which allows the CRTC to manipulate social media algorithms to favor certain types of media, whether it's the proposed, I think it was C68, which was designed to promote, to get rid of what are called online harms, ill-defined idea that could include things that the government considers to be politically incorrect, or whether it's the enormous subsidies that there's no question media outlets have to consider when they do their jobs. So I think what we need is more decentralization, more competition, more freedom, more choice. And you know what? That's the idea of having a free and independent media. It's not perfect, but it's better than all the alternatives. If we don't trust the people to decipher what is the truth, then how can we trust people who are in government to decide for them?
It seems like Western countries, not just Canada, but they're cracking down more and more and trying to regulate what can and can't be said on particular platforms. It's guised in the language of disinformation, misinformation, and fake news. What are the consequences of free speech being curtailed?
Let's go back to first principles again. If you think that the average reader, viewer, or listener is incapable of determining what is true and what is not, well, then how will a government official be able to make that same determination? If man is not capable of deciding for himself what is true and what is not, then how is he capable of deciding for others? Put differently, some say what we need is a watchman to come in, and he's going to say, oh, this is true and this is not true, so this can be broadcast and that can't be. Who watches the watchman? What if he's a liar? What if he spreads disinformation? If you think that an independent media outlet is going to spread disinformation, what's to stop the same disinformation agent from getting into the government bureaucracy that decides what's true and what's not? There is no perfect answer to disinformation, but the single greatest antibody to bad information is good information. To have an overabundance of information so that the truth clashes with the falsehood, and in the long run, human beings judge for themselves. Now, you might say, well, that's naive. How can you expect human beings to be able to make that discernment? Well, that's exactly what the censors are claiming they're going to do. They're going to hire human beings, presumably, to tell us what's true and what's false. But if humans can't do that, then how can they do it for other people? And the other answer is they can't. The least bad option is to allow unbridled free speech so that good ideas clash with bad, true information with false, and in the end, the right side will win.
That is why they are so afraid of him. They truly are. From the Liberal Party to the mainstream media to liberal voters, they're terrified of him because he doesn't just simply bend the knee. He wants people to have access to everything. He doesn't just want to follow one narrative. Or at least that's what he proposes. Right? Obviously, action is a lot different from words, but at the end of the day, the Liberal Party has done nothing but lie. And that is on full display. For years now. For literal years now. They are terrified of Poilievre because he simply just speaks the truth. He doesn't want this insane government overreach on everything. Who will decide what is true and what isn't? The government, right? That's what we're heading to. Who is going to regulate that? The government. It's a slippery slope. We've already seen what the Liberals have done with protests in the past. Freezing bank accounts, whatever else they've done. Sending in the RCMP, right? We've seen it time and time again. And now we're going to give them the power to dictate what we can and can't say. And they're terrified of losing that control. They're terrified of losing that power. And Poilievre's the man who will cause them to lose that power. From the mainstream media outlets all the way up to the Liberal Party. And quite frankly, honestly, Poilievre just has to keep doing what he's doing, and the Liberal Party is just going to implode. Because we've already seen pushback from the Bloc Québécois. Quebec doesn't like what the Liberal Party is doing. And they have 44 Quebec seats. It's only a matter of time before Quebec MPs really start to push back within caucus. That side of the caucus will implode. You have separatism literally forming in more provinces than we've seen previous to this. Right? It's typically just the Bloc in Quebec who wants to separate. Now over the past, I don't know, I guess you could say 10 years, Alberta has exploded in terms of their separatism and how they want to leave. And now you have Saskatchewan, Manitoba wanting to follow suit. No point in time has it been this divided. This is the most divided Canada has been. That's just the truth. The Liberals are terrified of losing power, and it starts with Poilievre. It absolutely does.
Frame this to my kids as you would never want to give power to your friends that you wouldn't want your enemies to have.
Exactly.
All right, let's step outside politics for a minute and do some get to know PR questions. Growing up, your wife may have tipped me off on this one, but growing up, who was your favorite wrestler when you were a teenager?
All right, I don't really need to know the rapid fire getting to know Poilievre. I just wanted to go over that media section there. We are heading into the final part of the stream. Thank you everybody for joining on YouTube, Rumble, and Kick. It's been a bit of a slow news day. I don't know what the hell I'm going to cover tomorrow. There's not much going on. There really isn't. When Parliament's out, it's a ghost town.
Canada was giving the United States a raw deal, and the president could very well walk away.
Carney is losing his support. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. This is something we've been seeing now for the past 2 weeks. We're having more polling data coming out showing that Carney's numbers are not going up. And not only that, his aggregate numbers are showing he's at the lowest point since the election. We also have updates from America. They're making some moves here around the world. We also have the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Trump trying to end this thing. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we got Shreya Teest posting this new Nanos poll. This is 38.4 for the Liberals, 34.7% for the Conservatives. The NDP staying flat at 11%, same with the Bloc and the Greens. And if you're new to the channel, Nanos polls always poll heavily Liberal. We also have this one from Liaison Strategies, also a Liberal pollster. This one showing it 39% Liberal, 37% Conservative, 11% NDP, 7% Bloc. Well, there's nothing much going on here with this polling data. It's just staying flat. We do have this from 388, this aggregate that takes all the polling data and showing here that the Liberals have the lowest seat projection count since the election at 156, Conservatives 142, which is what they're at right now. And the Bloc, the highest since the election, 31%, and the NDP 12 highest since of August 25. So basically, the separatist movement in Quebec is going to be taking seats from the Liberals. This is what we're seeing here. Carney's had numerous events here throughout the past couple months. Who cares? These kind of moments that really piss off Canadians realize this guy is a globalist banker who doesn't care about Canada. He's 91% invested in America, so this is no surprise, but most Canadians don't know that. The news here is continued rise of the Bloc. They could well emerge as a spoiler for the Liberals. That is what we're seeing here. The Bloc could be ruining Mark Carney's day here. Come the next election, Quebecers are going to be voting for the Bloc, and goodbye Carney's majority, goodbye Carney minority government. Looking at this article here, it says, just as many of us were getting ready for a much needed breather from the daily grind, several pollsters releasing their final numbers of the 2025 calendar, and to varying degrees, they all point in the same direction. Carney Liberals appear to have taken a pre-holiday hit in public support. I mean, this guy comes out just after Christmas, announces $2.5 billion for Ukraine when Canadians don't have enough food to eat. It's deplorable. Often I warn readers about polls fielded at unconventional times of year, such as the height of summer or long weekends. Collecting a representative sample during these periods can be more challenging, and the results can occasionally get wonky. Could the pre-holiday period fall into this category? I don't think so. I mean, look what Carney's done. Who cares? These moments where he's shown his true colors, that he doesn't care about Canada, this is a grift for him to get rich. There's little firm evidence to make such a claim, but if the LPC Carney numbers rebound early in 2026, this may become a precedent worth keeping an eye on. Comes down to it, people are realizing that Carney couldn't get the job done. He isn't the guy people thought he was. They thought Mr. Banker, maybe he knows how to handle the situation, handle Donald Trump. As we see, there's no deal coming, because Carney doesn't want to make a deal. Next up, we've got an interview here, which I thought was a fun little interview. Pierre Poilievre meets a lady where he used to deliver the paper as a boy to her door every day.
So you were my paper boy.
Yeah.
And you came twice to get the money for the son.
To collect.
To collect.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the right change.
You didn't?
No.
So what did I do? Did I call the cops or?
No, the third time you just kind of went. But after that, the fourth time when you came back, I gave you a really good tip.
You did? Okay,
I did.
Good. Well,
you probably forget that.
It was about $20?
No.
That's
really inflation back then.
Yeah, but $20 would have been a lot of money back then.
Exactly.
So you were a Calgary Sun subscriber, and I would get up at the crack of dawn,
Yes.
before the sun,
Every
before
Sunday morning.
before the rooster crowed.
Yep.
I was up delivering your newspaper.
My newspaper. You did. Yep.
And it was always there on the front porch.
It was.
Well,
you were very good at that.
In politics, just like when it comes to newspapers,
Yep.
my reputation is I deliver. So
He does, and he did a great job then, and you're doing even a better job now.
thank you very much.
We can't
Well,
wait till you're the next prime minister.
Good memories.
Still waiting for that. Hopefully that comes soon. Jumping over to CTV here. We've got some updates on the Ukraine.
I don't know if a spring election is going to come. It feels like it more and more as we head into 2026. My God, I can only hope people understand after seeing what they've seen in the past 9 months. For some reason, it wasn't enough in the past 10 years, so we needed another year of it. But hopefully people will eventually understand what the hell is going on. Like, Carney is just... He was never the choice. He's not ever going to rebound and be this choice. What we're seeing now is what he is. He is a out-of-touch loser who he didn't even live in Canada. He just appeared. He literally just appeared for the election. And then he won it. Like, that's literally what happened. He did not even live in the country previous to this.
Russia conflict. This seems close but far away.
The American president says Ukraine and Russia are closer than ever to a peace deal. Donald Trump spoke after a Mar-a-Lago meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, but there are no guarantees a 20-point plan will go ahead. With deep divisions over the future of territories Moscow's military has moved into.
A high-stakes meeting between two presidents that they hope could lead to the end of a nearly 4-year war between Russia and Ukraine.
All right, yeah, everybody hopes the war ends. Let's skip along here. Everybody wants the war to end. I think that's pretty much the news on that one. It just a bunch of more shaking hands and talking with really nothing going on. I'm just tired of our money being sent over there. That's really all it is at the end of the day.
News here with Donald Trump in America, which seems to be stirring the pot here worldwide.
With us now is CTV News U.S. political analyst Eric Ham. Eric, good to have you back once again, this time as we kind of take a step away from the here and now and look ahead to next year. What are the political stakes for Donald Trump when it comes to those negotiations that are expected, or the renewal, the reexamination of the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade deal?
You know, so many people, of course, are looking ahead to the midterm elections, but there are going to be so many political landmines for this administration to have to deal with even before we get to November. And perhaps I think the biggest is going to be what will take place with those negotiations over Kuzma, because we know already the president has signaled that he could and perhaps likely will walk away from this massive trade deal. And that's going to have enormous economic implications, not only for the United States, but for Canada as well. And certainly, given the cooling economy right now, the jobs outlook in terms of rising inflation and unemployment, those and what the president does on that trade agreement will certainly have a tremendous impact on all of that. And what the president does will have tremendous meaning for the global outlook as well.
If Trump pulls out of Kuzma and then puts tariffs on us 30% across the board, it's going to absolutely destroy our country. That's the only way to say it. This is pretty complicated because Donald Trump can't repeal the law, but he can use the executive branch to bypass it and essentially pull America out of the USMCA with 6 months notice, use the executive branch to stop enforcing.
I hope everybody's prepared for literally that exact thing to happen. Negotiations have not gone well. If we don't head to a spring election and the Liberal government sticks around, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again, I don't know why anybody thinks these Kuzma negotiations are going to turn things around and save us. Let's be real here. Just look at what's happened over the past 9 months, and now we're heading into literally the biggest negotiation between Canada, US, and Mexico, period. This is a huge deal. And it's most likely not going to go in our favor. Just saying. Nothing has gone in our favor with the US so far, negotiations-wise. And now we're heading into something like this? Come on. Come on now. Everybody's sitting back going, oh, they've got this. The Kuzma negotiations are going to turn everything around. We'll be saved. Oh yeah, Mark Carney, the master negotiator with all the experience in the world. He's done a great job so far. So, and as I said in my most recent video, if there's a time for him to jump ship, it would be in the spring. He has bit off more than he can chew, and that would be the perfect time for him to walk away from Canada and probably go back to wherever he came from. Because like I said, he wasn't living here previous to this election, so... I don't think they're going to have a good time with these Kuzma negotiations at all. And whether or not we even get a deal, it's up in the air. Because they're not at the table right now discussing one, so... Oh boy. Elbows up, right guys? I am so happy I can sit here and say I did not vote for these fools. I am so happy I could sit here and claim that. What deal? Exactly. No deal is going to come. It will not come.
USMCA, which is essentially de facto pulling America out of it. Now, Congress can then fight back and try to reinstate the USMCA Implementation Act that is in law. So essentially, this is a gray area here, but you can see it says under Article 34.6 of the agreement says any party has the right to withdraw from the agreement, giving 6 months notice. So it's in the agreement. Donald Trump has executive branch powers to do this, but he might be fighting in court over this like he's doing now with the Supreme Court and tariffs. So it's a bunch of moving pieces here. And unfortunately, this is awful for Canada either way because it creates instability. There's no predictability in the market. That's what companies and businesses need to invest in Canada. If they want to expand, if they want to lay off people, they want to hire people. This is awful for all of that.
Conversation surrounding this deal, Eric, has become so important here in Canada, of course. But do we have any signals on what it is that could potentially make Trump walk away from this?
Well, it's his own words and what we've heard specifically and directly from his U.S. trade representative back in November when public meetings began in earnest here in the United States. And of course, the administration was hearing from a number of key individuals and organizations as it relates to Kuzma. What we kept hearing over and over, even as industry and academics and others were singing the praises of this regional free trade agreement, it was the administration itself that continued to say that they believe Canada was giving the United States a raw deal, and the president could very well walk away. Now, all of this could be about negotiating tactics. We know Donald Trump is very good at trying to set the stage for that. But nevertheless, given how the president has talked about Canada and more importantly, how he's acted, again, this is very much, I think, a very real concern.
All right, so from negotiating tactics now to military action, Eric, and when we look at...
So before they go to that, I mean, Donald Trump, they might just say this is negotiating tactics. So it comes down to it, those tactics are working. I mean, we don't have a deal. Mark Carney didn't get a deal. We still have steel, aluminum, autos, forestry industry, etc., all getting hammered by tariffs. There's no deal. So when it comes down to it, Donald Trump doesn't feel he needs to get a deal with Canada. That's a problem.
What's happened recently, you know, the tankers in Venezuela, the presence in Greenland. I mean, these are big military moves. What could they signal for next year?
Yeah, and I think this is something that Canada also should be deeply, deeply worried about. Just recently, we have seen missile strikes in Nigeria. The president has named an envoy to actually negotiate Greenland becoming part of the United States. And when Donald Trump came into office, he made clear.
Why should we be worried about missile strikes in Nigeria? Just an honest question. I don't get how that relates to Canada at all, but okay. All right.
That he would
leave it to the mainstream media to somehow tie that into Canada.
Be willing to use what he called economic force to actually take Canada as well. And so when you look...
This is getting serious here with Greenland because they just sent J.D. Vance, the vice president, over there.
Look at the military aggression in Venezuela. Canada has an enormous amount of vast natural resources, and that is what the play is for Donald Trump and his ambitions to bring Canada under U.S. sovereignty has not waned at all this year. In fact, when you look at the moves that we're seeing in places like Greenland, Venezuela, Nigeria, I think that only puts a bigger target on Canada. And I think how the president deals with Kuzma also is going to play massively in his belief, in his thinking, and his ambitions that Canada should be part of the United States.
Which is notable, Eric, that that's still very much on the radar, because in Canada, of course, the reaction to the entire 51st state suggestion conversation has been everything from, laughing it off as a joke to that very serious message of Canada is not for sale. But this is still very much in Trump's sights?
Absolutely, it is. And it hasn't gone away, which is surprising, because oftentimes when Donald Trump says things like this, wanting Greenland, oftentimes we see it as bluster, that this is the president being just a master showman. But when you look at actions, Canada is still the only G7 nation that does not have a free trade agreement with the United States, save for Kuzma. The president continues to see tariffs as a really good thing, even though they're debilitating both for the U.S. and Canadian economy. And more.
It's almost like Mark Carney doesn't want to get a deal. Got this one here from National News Watch. Most dangerous period we've ever been in. Carney urged to bolster Team Canada approach ahead of Kuzma review. There it is. He's fear-mongering Kuzma now. He's not going to get a deal. He needs to scare Canadians now. Oh no, the Kuzma agreement's going to be ripped up. Donald Trump is so scary. You better elect me again, so then I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it this time, guys. Don't worry. I botched the first time, but don't worry. This second time, I'm totally going to take care of this. This comment here sums it up. What Team Canada? Who writes this bullcrap? Canada is divided worse than ever. Isn't that the truth? Separatist movements are absolutely exploding in 3 provinces now. Mark Carney is one of the biggest failures in Canadian history already as a prime minister. And there's no doubt that the situation is serious. We need a serious prime minister who's going to negotiate a real deal with Donald Trump and not just try to use this situation as a grift to get rich like Carney's doing.
More importantly, we're talking about more than a century of friendship, alliance, and partnership. And Donald Trump has already attempted in every way imaginable to blow that up. And the reason, of course, is the president believes that he can weaken Canada, and in doing so, make it that much easier for the United States to overtake the nation.
Well, before we let you go, Eric, on that note, how are tariffs going for President Trump around the rest of the world? Because we knew that at one time this was very much not just a Canada conversation.
That's right. The president, it's been basically the U.S. versus the world, as the United States has placed massive tariffs on all nations across the globe. And that is going to be, again, another sticky issue for the president in 2026, as the Supreme Court is expected to rule once again on tariffs. And this has been Donald Trump's signature economic policy. And the Supreme Court's decision will be crucial because it will ultimately determine where the power to implement tariffs lies, either with the executive branch squarely in Donald Trump's hands or with Congress. And that will certainly shape Kuzma, relations with Canada, and more importantly, what happens with those tariffs.
I sure hope that happens sooner than later, because then Carney won't be able to use that as a fear-mongering tactic to once again try to get a majority government. If the tariffs get removed because of the Supreme Court, Carney can't use Donald Trump as the scary boogeyman anymore, at least not for that. He's still going to use it for Kuzma, but it gives Carney less power. Another factor here, too, they mentioned at the beginning, Venezuela, the oil tanker that was captured by the U.S., it turns out that was going to China, and now China's pissed off. I'm guessing America knew this, Trump knew this, and they took that over. They wanted to send a message over to China. They're sending a message to Venezuela and Maduro. There's a lot of stuff going on all over the place. Not to mention we've got Russia. Where does Mark Carney fit in here trying to get a deal with Donald Trump? He had his chance. Trump is so busy with everything else. Trying to get a minute with the guy to get a deal is nearly impossible.
Yeah, Mark Carney is irrelevant in terms of the U.S. right now. They probably don't even think about it. He's so busy with everything else. The shit going on there. And like he said, Maduro and all that other foreign stuff, that, like, who cares about what Mark Carney's doing? I highly doubt they even talk to each other. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's live stream. Covered majority of what I wanted to cover. I don't think there's anything else really going on. Like I said, slow news day. Not sure what I'll be covering tomorrow. Might not even go live tomorrow if there's nothing, but we'll see when the time comes. Anyway, take it easy, everybody. Have a great rest of your day or night, depending on where you are from and when you're watching. Adios, everyone.
ending this. It's not simple, and now he's realizing this. He doesn't want to give definitive timelines because he knows that this is all a bit of a crap show here.
Added he would hold another call with Putin. Now both U.S. and Ukrainian presidents will meet with European teams in the coming